Input and output. So you have your input devices. So you're inputting 1 plus 1 into RAM. It then goes to your processor. It's processed. 2 goes back out into RAM to your output device. And then if you want to, here in your storage device. All right. So what are some of those input devices that you'll use? The very first is a keyboard. Um, this is a picture of a traditional keyboard, also known as a QWERTY keyboard, because the letters QWERTY can be found where the alphabet starts on your keyboard, and it spells QWERTY. At the very top, you'll have your hotkeys. You may even have, you will have a toggle key like caps lock. All right. You'll also have combination keys like control plus some other key that does some sort of function for you. Other types of keyboards will be your laptop keyboard, which is just like a traditional keyboard, except it doesn't necessarily have all the functions that a traditional keyboard will have. You have your virtual keyboard on your tablet. Okay, that kind of pops up on your screen. You have your thumb keyboards. All right, these are keyboards that are widely used on various smartphones and other small portable devices, and which are designed primarily for communicating via texting and connecting to the web. You also have pointing devices that act as input devices, such as your mouse. Okay, your mouse is very traditional. Typically you'll see an arrow whenever you're moving your mouse around on your screen. Okay, your typical type of mouse would be your optical mouse that's today, which uses what it emits and senses light coming from the mouse and beaming back from the surface that it's on. You also have your touch screens for those of you who have your smartphones and tablets. You also have game controllers, or actually input devices. They can actually also be output devices. And of course you have a stylus. I'm using a stylus to give this particular presentation to you guys. Here a stylus is being used to write on a particular tablet. Other input devices could be scanning devices. Scanning devices basically convert scanned text and images into something that your computer understands. The very first category are what are known as optical scanners. Optical scanners basically accept documents consisting of text or images and converts them into a machine-readable form. First being a flatbed, as you can see here from this picture, it's just a flatbed, and then you place whatever document you want on there, and it scans it, and it's copied, it's inputted. All right. You also have your document, and that's where you can feed multiple sheets at the same time. In other words, you'll lay multiple sheets down, and then the machine will take one at a time and scan them in. You also have something that's portable. You can actually move it around and then lay it across, run it across, okay, a document. You also have 3D scanners today that can scan something that's in 3 dimensions. You also have, as another input device, card readers, okay, that will read like your credit card, for instance, that has a magnetic strip on the back of it, and a chip today as well. Since those chips are very difficult to duplicate, while the magnetic ink on the back of a credit card can be duplicated, or at least the chips are harder. Then you have your barcode readers. Okay, there are 2 types. There's UPC, the UPCs, and then there's a MaxiCode. UPCs being more like what you'll see when you go shopping, and then the MaxiCode's being used by like UPS or something. You also have what are known as RFID readers. A lot of times they'll actually place an RFID tag in clothing to perhaps protect it. while they have readers by the doors that can detect it moving out and in. These are ways that you can use readers to perhaps track not just clothing, but something like cattle, and where it goes and roams, whether or not it's been with other cattle in that particular area in case um, there's a virus or disease with one of the cattle. You'll know what other stock it's been infected because of that. You also have what character and mark recognition devices. The first being what's known as MICR, which is magnetic ink character recognition. You'll find these on your checks at the very bottom if any of y'all still write checks. I still do for a couple of things. The bank actually puts magnetic ink at the very bottom, such as your account number and the check number that can be read. You also have OCR. It doesn't use magnetic ink, but it does have printed characters that a reader can understand and read. And in OMR, back in the day, when you take your SATs, we used to use a number 2 pencil to mark to mark what we thought was the answer. You may still do it today, or you may use a computer, but that's what OMR does. OMR is an optical mark recognition, which recognizes marks that are made, and OCR stands for optical character recognition. Other input devices are image capturing devices, such as your digital camera or basically your phone, which is a convergence of technologies, allowing you to take pictures, and of course webcams. For those of you who may want to talk to me via WebEx, we'll use webcams to talk to one another via live over the internet. Okay. There are also audio input devices. Many of you perhaps use Siri or Alexa that's recognizing your commands via your voice in terms of searching for a song or searching for a book online using those particular types of services. Output devices. Output is basically our processed data or information. So if we go back to our previous screen here, you can see that once you've inputted something, it's processed in the RAM, it's going to be outputted so that we can see it. So one of the typical natural places for us to start seeing what's been processed is through our monitor. All right. When we look at monitors, they may or may not look all the same. But if you were ever required to purchase, a couple hundred monitors for your organization, what would you look for? And some of the quality issues that you'll look into are, to begin with, is the resolution. In terms of resolution, it's measured by pixels, which is basically a picture element, a dot, so to say. And the more dots you have, the higher the resolution and the higher the quality that you'll have. You'll also have what is known as contrast ratios. Contrast ratios basically represent two different colors. If you had two different colors side by side, perhaps the lightest white on this side and darkest black on this side will give you the contrast ratio in terms of being able to distinguish between the two. You also have what's known as the size. Basically, in terms of the size, what we're referring to is of a monitor from angle to angle here. How large is the display size? There's also what's known as dot pitch. Dot pitch is basically the distance between each pixel. Okay, you want to have a bunch of them, but the distance also matters, where you want less distance between the pixels for a better quality. And then there's what's known as aspect ratio. And that's basically, can you look at the screen like this, or do you also have the capacity to look at it like that in a wider aspect? When looking at monitors today, most of them, at least for personal computer usage, etc., you're going to be looking at a flat panel monitor. They can come in LCD, which is the older technology, with liquid crystal displays. Okay. Um, they can also come in LED, which is today's technology, which is a light emitting diode, which uses awesome backlighting technology. And then you have the OLED, with the O standing for organic, which uses organic material for backlighting, allowing for the evolution of these flat panels to be lighter and thinner. You also have what are known are, in terms of the different types of monitors that are being used, they're the ebook monitors. The advantage of the ebook monitors is that a lot of times when you have like natural sunlight hit on it, it reflects the light like it's paper, and thus there's no glare, etc. It's easier to read versus perhaps using a tablet to read a book. You have to be careful with sunlight. You also have your digital whiteboards, which allow you to project things off your desktop and interact with that whiteboard rather than going back to your laptop. You also have what is known as an ultra high definition television. Okay, and with ultra high definition televisions, you just have a seriously high pixel rate, seriously high quality uh, monitor that allows you to perhaps take better stills and use images in a more professional quality rather than just amateur. And then, of course, if you're ever in a classroom, you have your digital projectors that allow for projection of an image. For those of you who perhaps have digital projectors at home for a movie experience in a theater. Outside of your monitors, we also have printers that produce output for us. Okay, so output are our monitors and now our printers. And just like our monitors, we want to measure quality as well. How do we do that? Through resolution, just the same, but instead of through pixels, now we have something called DPI, which is dots per inch. It's almost the same thing. It's dots per inch on something that's a hard copy. And obviously, the higher the number, the better. Next, we have color in terms of the different colors it can print, and even in black and white, what are the different shades of black and white that are available. Speed is important. For instance, is it 10 to 15 pages per minute? Memory is important, since when you're printing, what it is that you're printing needs to go into the memory of the printer so it doesn't get spatched up at somewhere on a server. And then there's what's also known as duplex printing. For those of you who still print a lot, I think with monitors and with technology today, such as your ebooks, etc., we print a lot less. But when we do print, we want to be printing duplex, meaning that we're printing on side A and side B of the same piece of paper. So if we were to flip it over, that would be our page 2. The different types of printers would be, number 1 are inkjet, which are inexpensive. Right, basically they drop ink on paper. And then you have your laser printers, which uses laser light beams to produce our images. And of course today we have our 3D printers, which create 3D shapes, as you can see here in this little picture here, by adding thin layer after layers of material until the final shape is formed. There's also what's known as cloud printing. With cloud printing, you can connect a printer basically to the internet. And then from there, rather than you having to be within an organization to print or at home to print, you can be anywhere in the world, like way over here, and decide to print. And of course, your printer that you have set up to connect to cloud printing will then print out the page so that perhaps when you arrive at work, it'll already be printed. You also have your thermal printers. Thermal printers are used at gas stations. They typically use heat-sensitive paper. That's why your paper, if you ever have your receipts printed out, feel warm when they come out of the gas station. You also have your plotters. These are special purpose printers that produce special perfect deliverables such as maps, images, or engineering drawings. Another form outside of monitors and printers of output devices are our audio output devices, such as our speakers for those of us who love music, okay, and for those of us who respect those around us, our headphones. Next, let's talk about combination input and output devices. So rather than just being input or output, now we have a logical and, so to say. So we have headsets. I use a headset in making this recording that allows me to talk, okay, into the mic section to record what it is that I'm saying, and then later on I can replay it and listen to it from the headset portion of it, or the headphones portion of it. What also uses input and output devices are the VR type devices that are out there, or even virtual augmented. In terms of virtual reality, VR, you have your head mount displays, as you can see here in this picture. Not only do you see things, but there are gyroscopic instruments in it to detect your movement, so that if you were to turn your head to the left or right or angle it, etc., you're providing input rather than just looking at the display and seeing the output. And the same thing for the controller, for a VR controller. These virtual reality technologies create what are known as a virtual or immersive experience for users. Last, we have what's known as ergonomics. Because we are on technology and working with technology day in, day out, guess what can happen? Well, the first thing that can happen is you can get eye strain if you stare at your iPhone or your smartphone all day long. You want to be sure that you're taking breaks. If you're in front of a monitor, the regular desktop monitor all day, you want to be sure that you're taking breaks and being sure that you do your best to focus on everything within the same distance as well. You also want to be careful with back and neck pain that can happen, especially if you're on a laptop. Okay, you can see here in this picture, all right, where you want the monitor to be at, that you're not hunched over looking down at it, which is almost a have to with a laptop. But if you have a desktop, it's different. Or with a laptop, if you can get a docking station or external devices, such as an external monitor and keyboard to attach to your laptop, when you're not being mobile, when you go back to your office or at home, that can help with back and neck pain. And of course, carpal tunnel syndrome from repetitive strain injuries such as typing too much, moving your mouse around too much, that can cause some serious pain in your hands, etc. And a way to mitigate that is obviously taking breaks, stretching, and learning different things in terms of interacting with your computer. So if you're having a digit problem with your hand that you use your mouse on. You may want to learn some hotkeys on your keyboard. You may want to use voice input. You may want to switch it up a little bit and use your left hand if you're a righty, using your mouse or something like that, and back and forth, or look for input and output devices that are designed ergonomically, with an ergonomic design in hand, so that it'll reduce any type of repetitive strain injury that you might have. So we talked about input and output devices today, starting with input from our traditional QWERTY keyboard, okay, to the different types of keyboards that are out there. Next, we went to pointing devices. We're all familiar with our mouse. Okay, we may not be familiar with the other things, such as a game controller being a pointing device or categorized as a pointing device. We have our scanning devices from our scanners, card readers, barcode readers, RFID readers, to the good old SAT days of our optical mark recognition readers. Okay, our image capturing devices, our phones, and of course audio input devices that recognize our voice. Next, we talked about output devices, our monitors, and how we grade them in terms of which one should we buy, the different types. All right, and we did the same thing with printers in terms of quality and types. All right, and then of course there are also output devices in terms of sound, not just visual, from our speakers to headphones. Next, we talk about input and output devices, combination of them, logical and. All right, we have our headsets and in virtual reality as well. And understanding our interactions with input and output devices so much today, and that we give it so much time, we must be cognizant of ergonomics to ensure that we don't have any of these negative effects with working with technology every day. And that is it for input and output devices.